Good Monday morning, everyone. Whoo, okay, we are surviving August. We're surviving, you guys, but we have so much to talk about today. So you guys are listening to me, Amy, Valerie, and our lovely author guest today is Di, and this is Author Talk, you guys. Russell is not here, and I feel like this is a first, Valerie. This is the first that Russell is not here.
I absolutely agree.
Make it. Yeah, so, oh man, I hope he's off
It's
like having
usually
a
hell
ton
or
of
high
fun.
water for him.
I know. Dedication.
Yes. Yeah,
he is slacking.
Forgetting about it.
Slacking. But you guys, let's talk about our weekends. So today, my kids start school on Wednesday, and today is Meet the Teacher. So I found out about the teachers for the girls. And, it's going to be a fun, exciting year to see how things go and play out. I have a second and a first grader now. So, they're big girls and they are super independent, and we have been pushing our independent boundaries. So it's a bittersweet moment. I'm excited for them to start school, but I'm also sad that they're starting school. So, we will just see. Wednesday, I could be a complete ball bag, and I'm really glad we don't have a show on Wednesday, okay? Because my makeup would be all over the place. But August has turned into a crazy time for us. So earlier, we went to Josh's mom's birthday party. And then last weekend, we had another birthday party. And this past weekend, we had a birthday party. And then in 2 weeks, we'll have Sky's birthday coming up. So every weekend so far in August has been booked with fun things for the kids and their friends and those kinds of things. But it's also one of those things. So I just held my kids extra tight this weekend because it's a bittersweet moment for me. On top of that, they hated that I did that and, wanted me to go away and just leave them alone. So I'm going to enjoy and soak it up as much as I can. And, next week I'll give you an update on how their first 3 days went, because they start on Wednesday and then Monday it'll be a full week. So we will see how that goes. But you guys, how was your weekend? What all did you guys do? Di, I hope you're staying cool, because you said you had a hot, what is it, like a hot wave go through, a heat wave go through?
This is, I think, the 5th heat wave we've had in the UK, and we're not really built for this kind of weather. So it's just survival. I think we're in survival mode, trying to keep cool and, praying for rain, really. So we're in drought now in Nottinghamshire, which isn't great. So we're all doing a little rain dance, trying to get the rain to come.
Oh, well, me and Valerie definitely understand just surviving. We're not necessarily thriving. We are for sure surviving. Valerie is currently frozen, but she did a lot of cool stuff last weekend and this weekend. So when she pops back on, we can talk about it. But Di, so when we talked a little bit offline before we got on, and you said you had a downstairs AC unit keeping your dogs cool, and then you have a little fan. I would do the same thing if I want my animals to be cool, and I will slightly suffer until I can get back down there. So tell us, where exactly are you located in the UK?
So I'm on the edge of Sherwood Forest in Nottinghamshire, so in a little village called Bilsall.
Cool. Nice. I like your backdrop with the wooden beams in the back.
Thank you. Yes, we live in a really old house. So the house was built in the early 1600s, if not earlier than that. And ordinarily the backdrop is even more scenic, because I'm normally in my writing studio in the attic, which is just full of old beams. But it's like it's been like sitting in an oven there this afternoon. So I'm afraid you've got my office instead, but still pretty with the beams.
Oh, it's just as pretty, and we don't want you to overheat. So I'm glad you're not in the attic. We do not want that, and we know what that is like. So we do not want that. Well, what did you do this weekend or past weekend?
The last weekend, well, because I have an interesting life running a publishing business and also an animal sanctuary. So pretty much every day is the same in terms of animal care and looking after the animals here. And as you quoted with the AC issue, animals come first, second and third here, really. So it's trying to get the animals through the heat wave and making sure that the team here at the animal sanctuary survive as well, because have to keep them propped up with fluids, make sure they're not going to collapse in a heap of sheep partway through the shift. So yes, as I said before, it's really just surviving the hot temperatures and getting through to something cooler hopefully next week.
Yeah, hopefully. I will keep my fingers crossed for you, because it's currently 105 here Fahrenheit, and so we understand the heat, Valerie and I. Valerie's heat is a little bit more humid and swampy than
Right.
is necessarily. So it's a much hotter there. But Valerie, what did you do this weekend and past weekend? I know you had some fun events that you were at.
Yeah, actually, I usually don't do outdoor marketing coming into the fall, but there's a book themed market for all kinds of and on the east side of downtown Houston, which was great. It's very well supported. Sorry. And so while I was there though, I met this precious little girl, Natalia Macias, and she had just did her first market. That was her first market, and she brought her book that she published herself. And then she was so excited, and just to see her enthusiasm and just connecting with customers, and it was so great. And she had published a little coloring book and everything, but it's a great book. Hold on 2 seconds, I'm gonna grab it. It's right here. This is it. I don't know. Can you see it? It's too bright.
Oh, no, it's
There we
super
go.
colorful. Yeah. That's
It
gorgeous.
is so cute. It's really cute. And yeah, and then she has all these cute little illustrations and stuff in it. But she has dyslexia, and so she was sharing her story, and I was like, as authors, I felt like, she persevered and was committed to writing a book. So I was like cheering her on, like, go, go, go. So that was very exciting. But we got rained out, of course, because it's summer and like pop-up thunderstorms, and well, we just like ran for our lives.
Well, that's fair.
But that's okay. That's okay. And then talking about hot, we spent the day in the country helping. My mom is selling her house way out in the country, and so just it's sweltering out there. It's really beautiful, but wow, it's hot. So I can totally relate, Di, about what you're going through out there.
Thank you.
It's a lot. It's so pretty, but wow, you have to come inside and get some relief. But that's about it. We're just getting ready for school too. I just have school starting in a couple of weeks, so I'm excited also.
Yeah, your son is going to UTSA, right?
Yeah, he just left actually this weekend also. So we're back to empty nest over here, just the two of us. I'm like, okay, I have to downscale the groceries, downscale all this stuff, downscale the laundry. It's okay.
That's a
I don't
bonus.
mind, but
That is a bonus. Downscaling the laundry is a bonus.
But on the meantime, though, I do get to babysit the grandson once a week. So he's my he comes over and keeps me entertained for sure.
Oh well, yeah. And
he's 7 months now.
Yeah, you don't have to share his attention with anyone. It's
speaking
great.
of that,
I love it.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of that, he's crawling, and I was like, all these like things like I thought I baby proofed. No, you did not. So you have to start over.
Yeah.
You put all that stuff behind you, and you're like, wow, life lesson again. Here we go. But
yeah,
it's okay.
I'm like, I remember this.
I like it.
Yeah, it's a crazy.
Don't eat the dog food.
Oh, yes.
Don't eat the dog food.
Yeah, and you have to move it and all that. Well, you guys, I want to thank all of our listeners and our viewers. So, Di, I'm going to put my Russell hat on for a minute. Most people listen to us and watch us and the replays on our Facebook channel, our YouTube channel, and any one of our social media channels. And they can go to Amazon, Spotify, Good Pods, anywhere that you can search for a podcast, type in Author Talk, and you can look for the Crimson, Red, and Gold. And you will see all of our episodes from how we started going down to Russell's place in downtown Houston and recording them to where we have evolved to today. And hopefully you will see how we continue to grow in the future. But I will say, good old Russell, I'm not as enthusiastic about that part, I guess, as Russell is, and him over here. Listen, he's the one that wanted it to be 45 minutes because of the average workout. And so it's just a fun little thing that we started almost a little over 10 years ago. And so it was his kind of dream to turn this into what it currently is. So he always likes to poke fun at me at the fact that I was the person behind the camera, and now I am the introducer, I guess, of it. So he
You're the
usually
host.
yeah, he usually pokes a lot of fun at me for those things and his snarky little comments that we all just thoroughly love because we love Russell. And so hopefully he will be with us next week, but we hope that he's off taking care and having fun for what he's doing. But Valerie, let's get Di talking about her animal sanctuary, her publishing, her writing, her book. We have so much to dive in with Di. So Valerie, take it away.
I am just fascinated with your lifestyle. Just can you share a little bit about yourself and where you are, and then what you do, and then how this all led to poetry, or poetry came along as you were doing this? Can you share all that, please?
Yes, of course. Yeah. So I live on the edge of Sherwood Forest in Nottinghamshire, and in a very old house, as you can see from the beams behind. But kind of getting to here with the animal sanctuary has been a bit of a checkered route. So started writing in my teens, writing poetry in my teens, and also as a part of my first university degree. And then life takes over, doesn't it? And I ended up starting a marketing business, and got my kind of creative fix, if you like, from the great buzz of working with clients and coming up with creative campaigns for clients, and put my own writing ambitions, if you like, or my own writing desires on one side for a good, I don't know, 15, 20 years. So kind of let that roll. And then, as often happens when you have your own business, you get to a bit of a point of burnout and think, this isn't great. I'm just going to die in the saddle. So what shall I do? And we took a decision, my husband and I, to move out from the suburbs, buy this old house, and try and have a different pace of life, a different style of life. And I remember sitting in this office, which is actually now my publishing office here, not my writing office, thinking, in this beautiful house, I can write here. And oh boy, that was true. Because the house itself gave me a lot of inspiration. The history of the house, the history of the place that we live, the beautiful rural environment. It's very stimulating to a writer's imagination. And I particularly like writing about the histories of other people, as well as things that have happened to me. So that was the start, really. And then because I did a writing degree, creative writing master's degree, to kind of start myself again, kind of kickstart the whole process. And as a reward at the end of that process, I ended up with 4 chickens, because I'd always wanted to keep chickens. And from that point, the animal sanctuary evolved, because we then had an opportunity to buy the field that used to be attached to this beautiful old farmhouse. We had to buy that back and put that back to the farm to kind of create the farm again. But I didn't want to exploit the land or the farming history. I wanted it to be something that was more in the custodial nature of what we were doing here, which is kind of looking after a piece of history. So I thought we would get some animals just to graze the land and give those animals a second chance of life. So from 4 chickens in the garden, that then eventually went up to about 170 different animals out in the field, elderly and disabled livestock. So animals that wouldn't have a chance ordinarily at a long life, or to a long happy life. We're down to about 140 now, but still plenty to look after.
Yes.
And that runs in tandem with my other job, which is as a publisher of poetry, of other people's poetry, in a pamphlet format. Chapbook, I think, is how you describe them in the States. So trying to promote other people's work and get poetry into as many people's hands as possible. So that's it in a nutshell.
That's so, I feel like there was a huge learning curve taking on the animals.
Oh, definitely. Yes. I mean, learning by doing, really. And
yes,
I think this is where, ignorance is great, because if you knew at the start what you had to know to help the animals survive, you would be terrified and would never do it. But, learning by doing and acquiring different species and learning about those different species and their needs and their medical care as I went along. That was good. Good for me. I like finding things out. I like, doing my research, so that kind of satisfied that little bit of curiosity as well. And then helping animals, you can see the benefit immediately, of that care, which is very rewarding.
And I know you mentioned that the house was inspirational, but I can't imagine that the animals are inspirational as well, because
Sure.
they're so
Yeah.
they're communicating with you, I know.
They are, absolutely. And I think as my own, health issues have come to the fore, then actually the work that we do here in caring for the animals and their issues, I was always sensitive to that, but it's helped me deal with some of my own personal situation. And also I think you see how compassion and empathy works both ways, and how animals can inspire you creatively, but also kind of keep you going, keep that spirit going when sometimes things are really difficult.
Exactly. So I know you said you started writing poetry as a teen. What was it about poetry that keeps you engaged as a writer?
I think it's the kind of the distillation of emotion or the story, trying to find a form or the shortest form of words that really nail what you're trying to say. So I'm a little bit scared of long form of fiction because so many words, so many words. Whereas actually with poetry, the craft is making it condensed, but it may not be a short poem, maybe a long poem, but actually what you want to say is quite big. So how do you make it fit that space? And the craft is making it fit that space and still communicate what you want to say, and still help the reader feel what you want them to feel at the same time. That's really what appeals to me.
Yes, and poetry is such a unique format for that, making the reader embrace your message quickly, almost, and like you get them in that zone quicker than a story. And do you have a special method you use to start to craft a poem, or do you just let it flow and then you go back and edit?
What I normally I do a lot of work in my head before I get to paper. So normally I have a little idea of what it is I might want to write about. And I actually have a little, on my desk for the past 2 or 3 years, I've had a diary, which is my ideas for poems diary, which is one page a day. So anytime during the day, if any idea strikes me, I'll just put that down on that page and never forget about it. But it's still there, in the background. And then I can kind of roll that round in my head and think, well, maybe that is a poem. But then when I want to put it down, I'll go to a point of mapping it out on one sheet of A4, just all the different elements that I would like to bring into the poem, whether it's things that I've researched, things that I've felt, things that I know, things that other people might have said to me, and just splurge the whole thing down on one piece of paper. And then I don't actually write the poem anymore on paper, I go straight to screen. So that's my process, if you like.
So how many books do you have currently?
This is my fifth book, I think. Yes, I've done two pamphlets, 2 full collections, and this is my third full collection, the latest one.
Nice. And let's see, this one is called, let me pull it up real quick. I'm sorry, my hard graft. And what is this one about? Because it seems like it's got a lot of things going on. Can you share that, please?
Yes. So the center of the book, if you like, is what happens when you're overtaken by health issues, or when you have some kind of sudden physical shock to the self. And then all the issues that come around that, whether you have to rejig your life, think about how things impact other people, what happens when health issues impact your friends, when somebody has a long-term illness, or when somebody dies. So it's examining that, because in 2019 I was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and that was obviously a really pivotal moment in my life, and that really stopped me in my tracks in terms of what I wanted to write about. And so I took a long time to put that experience into poems. But then from that core experience of my own, I've managed to build these other poems around it, about other people and health discoveries of other people, and then things that make life worth living, things that make you laugh. The work of living, the hard graft of living, the hard graft of surviving.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, things like that just make you re-examine just like the importance of certain things as well.
Yes.
Just even like my son was a victim of a violent attack and crime, and then you're like, what if, and then you just kind of like all of those things come into play, so, and I'm sure that affected, just your outlook on your life as well, just crafting all these poems.
Yes, and I think most of us at some point in our life will have a big health event, whether it's our own or whether it's our parents or our children, and then you have a feeling that your life before, which you took for granted, the normality of it, the pace of it, you'll never get that back. So you have the before and then you have the after, and it's how you deal with the after and how you process what's happened to you or the special person in your life that it's happening to. And that moment is really key, I think, to develop, how you then take things forward.
So in Hard Graphs, do you talk mostly about your personal experiences or just the world around you, or trying to integrate a lot of different ideas into this book?
So the book's divided into 4 sections, and the first section is about my experience and how I was diagnosed with a brain tumor and what happened specifically around that period of time, and how I managed to get through that, thinking about the animals as well and my relationships with the animals. And then the second part of the book is about the health of others, the loss of others, and how we deal with grief. And then the third part of the book is very different. It's about historical characters who have helped with discoveries, key discoveries in science that help other people through their health difficulties. And then the fourth part of the book is quite fun. It's where we look at things that have been either entertaining or what make us enjoy life, the things that you look back and think, that was a really funny or experience that I got something out of, so there's a bit more light-hearted poetry in that section.
Nice. That sounds like a great collection. Amy, did you have a question?
I have several questions, actually.
Awesome.
So one, my question is about your animal sanctuary. What type of animals do you have?
So we have sheep, goats, ponies, 1 pig, ducks, hens, geese. I think that's it for now. Yeah, so plenty of poultry, lots of birds who've not had a very good life, and lots of aged sheep with arthritis and other issues.
Oh, see, okay. So I asked this question because a couple weeks ago I took my kids to here it's a drive-through safari, and there's a bunch of animals, but the one that we went to is the one that a lot of people give him these animals because they're sick or they were found in poor conditions and those kinds. And so you can see them thriving now versus kind of where they were. And I think doing those kinds of services to animals, one is very like therapeutic, and I think it kind of goes both ways. I'm a huge dog lover. I mean, animal lover in itself, but a huge dog and cat lover. And so I do believe in not to sound crazy, not like healing powers, but how you can kind of help heal each other during traumatic things, and I do believe that animals sense that, and just as much as humans do. Like the other day I was crying because, my kids are going back to school and I'm a huge ball bag, and I'm just standing there crying. And my dog, this big 80-pound dog who wouldn't hurt a fly, comes over and then just wraps his arm and hugs me. So I think there's a lot of just almost like therapy in helping animals in sanctuaries. And yours of birds and goats and all of those that have maybe, they might be sick or they don't have necessarily the best current life, or they're, like you said, with arthritis and stuff, giving them kind of a loving home, I think is just amazing. So I wanted to know what kind of animals those are, because I just finished going through the safari and I just love on all the animals. If I could sit in the middle of the forest and let all of the animals come to me, and Sleeping Beauty or Snow White, it would be heaven for me. So I'm jealous of that you get to do your animal sanctuary. And then for your poetry books, I feel like, and Valerie, I don't know if I'm the only one, I feel like poetry is incredibly difficult to write. I think it takes a lot of skill and discipline to write poetry. and especially on the topics that you are, kind of like hardships and those kinds of things in life, and kind of dealing with them and moving forward. So my question for you is, what is your inspiration for your poetry? I know this last one was, your brain tumor and kind of going through those hard things in life, but where do you find your other motivation to write it in poetry form?
I think because I'm now, before, when I didn't think of myself as a writer or as a poet, I didn't really have the same kind of outlook for inspiration. I was looking around wondering how to get started. Now, a few books in and actually having a process, I think what I try to do is to see inspiration everywhere, and then it's kind of funneling to what could be a good poem, what could be of interest to other people as well as myself. So not just writing for me, but writing for other people, and who would get something from that. I think that's the other thing, is, are you right? I'm not specifically writing for an audience, but always having somebody else at the end of the poem in mind. Will somebody understand that? Will somebody enjoy it, get something from it, understand the emotion of it, really.
Yeah, I think that makes it a little bit easier to write. I know when I was in high school and I was in English class and we had to write poetry, mine was god awful. So it's not a strength that I have at all, but I do enjoy reading it, because I think the emotion that poetry pulls out of you as a reader, I think, is just one of the powerful ones, which is what makes, to me, poetry one of the hardest writing forms to do, because you really are drawing on emotion. And like you said, you're not necessarily writing for another person, but you do have that person in kind of like the back of your mind when you're coming towards the end of poetry. So I think poetry is one of the most powerful forms of writing, which is why it's the most difficult, which is probably why I was not very good at it in English. I'm not a writer at all, Di, so I just mark it and I live through you guys is what I do. But I always find it fascinating when we get to talk to a poet, because they are far and few between. I don't get to encounter poets very often, but it is just a wonderful writing craft that not everybody can do. So I love that you have written in poetry, and that's kind of how you see, I'm not necessarily like how you see life, but it just kind of comes and flows to you. That's what I feel like makes you a good poet. So my other question for you is, what is next for you? Are you going to, do you have another poetry book that you're working on?
Yes, I do. There's another book which is almost ready to find a publisher, which is about the natural world, and also includes a section about the trees of Sherwood Forest. I think most people know about the major oak in Sherwood Forest and the legend of Robin Hood, but there are lots of other named oaks in Sherwood Forest, all with really interesting history. So there's a little section on them as well. So the next book is much more about the land and giving the land and the natural world a voice around me, the immediate land around me. So not something abstract, but actually here, physically here, the land that we own, and the natural world around here as well.
Nice. I think that's I think that's like a beautiful thing to write about. So I love that. So so there are some authors that me and Valerie encounter, and I'm curious to see if you are one of them. And if so, I'm going to continuously pick your brain about. Do you write multiple books, or in your case, multiple poems at a time, or are you strictly one at a time kind of person?
Multiple things, because I think that making it look like they're all kind of joined up and themed happens afterwards, after you've maybe written 50, 60 poems, and they're maybe loosely connected somehow with a theme, or you can package them up, you can market them as a theme. They're not written in one linear sequence. They're written over 3 or 4 years in pockets when something inspires you, and then you put it on one side and you go off and write other things. So for me, I like that multi-layered approach to writing. I find that quite inspiring for me, quite motivating, to be able to have lots of pans on the stove at the same time, having something brewing about a tree here, and I could write that about sheep here. And actually something funny happened to me here, and that could also be a poem. But that's great, because then you're your brain can kind of keep working at these things in the background. You don't have to finish it there and then, or you can just do a draft and leave it and then come back to it and rewrite it. So that's that's quite fun, actually. That's quite a fun bit of the process.
See, Di, me and you, we need to be friends, because I feel like if I was a writer, I would kind of like how you said, many, like pots on the stove or irons in the fire kind of thing. I thrive on that kind of stress and environment. I don't know why, but it also kind of brings me happiness, and it challenges you in new ways, right? Which I like to be challenged, and I find. So how do you keep everything straight or structured when you're working on so many at a time?
It is hard, I have to say. It's not an easy thing, because in my life the animal sanctuary comes first. I then run a really busy, thriving, growing business, and that takes up a lot of daytime as well. So my writing life is squeezed in around the edges of that, but I don't think that's necessarily to its detriment. I think because I have to work in these little concentrated pockets to do the writing, I think that maybe forces the work to evolve, in a very kind of concentrated burst. I also go on courses a lot. So there's, in the UK and possibly also in the US, there's a lot of things you can now do online. You can go for digital retreats where you go off for a week, you're still in your own home, you're with a tutor and other writers online, and you have a really concentrated period of writing. And that's great for me, because I don't have to physically go anywhere. I can still do all the rest of the stuff, but I can do the writing and focus on that. And that, again, just gives me a little boost, to kind of keep things fresh, keep things new, and also make you feel part of something, feel part of a writing community, rather than just being on your own, doing your own mad things, juggling all the things together. But I had my previous job before publishing was in marketing, and what I used to get a thrill out of was doing all those things for clients, all the different things at different levels, and doing all the juggling. And I think that just, if you're like that as a person, you like all those multiple levels of stimulation. Actually, writing is great, because you can pick things up, put things down, and kind of shuffle things around, but just keep moving forward, which is good.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. 100%. So my
Absolutely.
last question that I'm going to ask, and then I'm going to throw it on back to Valerie, is you've mentioned your publishing company. And so do you publish only poetry with your publishing company, or do you publish all kinds of books within your company?
So it's almost exclusively poetry. We have done some short stories as well, but it's mostly poetry. And any of the short stories have been bookended by poetry. So they open with poetry and they close with poetry, and there's a short story in the middle.
Oh, nice.
So it's mostly poetry, and it's short anthologies of poetry on a theme. So it's 10 poems about dogs, 10 poems about beer, 10 poems about mountains, 10 poems about art. So it's poems by different people put together in a mini anthology, and it's I shall wave one at you here. So it's a beautiful piece of art on the cover. It's supplied with a bookmark and an envelope, so you can send it as a gift to somebody else.
Oh, nice.
And within the pages, there are 10 poems by 10 different writers, with the idea that even if you don't particularly like poetry, one of those poems should speak to you on that subject. If you like beer and you don't like poetry, within those 10 poems about beer, there should be one poem that will entertain you.
Absolutely.
So
I love that. And then that gives different exposure to people who might not have read poetry otherwise.
Yeah, so we sell to bookshops, sure, they're stocked in bookshops, but also museums, art galleries, cafes, bakeries, farm shops, lots of places internationally. So it's getting poetry into the hands of people by stealth. You find a theme that people will like, whether it's their hobby or their passion, and then you provide poems on that subject. And then people think, poetry isn't that horrible thing that I did at school that I thought I would understand. It's actually something really lovely. And it's a gift. It is a gift to give somebody a good poem that they will treasure and maybe want to read over again.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, that's a beautiful way of summarizing that. And then that, what a creative way of doing it, like museums and coffee shops, but having the envelope too. So if you want to send it to someone, I think that is a very creative way. Because yes, the poetry week or 2 weeks in school was, I did dread it. I don't mean that in a mean way, Di, but it was just because it was not a skill set of mine. It was always my lowest grade, and I just struggled with writing it, which is why, in my personal opinion, it's the hardest form of writing to do, because it is, in my opinion, incredibly difficult to do, and to make it effortlessly and flow, and make it have emotion in it about things that people may not think have emotion, So it's a beautiful form of writing, and I'm jealous that poets can do it. So I applaud you 100%. But Valerie, I'm going to let you take it back. Take the wheel from me, Valerie.
Sure. Di, I want to talk about, like, your poems have been all over the place. You've been and you're an award winner. How do you, I guess, coach somebody to maybe get their work out there so it is recognized, because people are familiar with you, they know you, you're getting accolades. So how would you, I guess, guide somebody to do that with their work to get it out there?
I think well, for me, you have to love your writing and love the poem, and make the poem the best that it can be. And then you have to take that hat off as your writer hat, and then you have to become the person that is trying to place your poem, market your poem, sell your poem somewhere else, whether that's getting it into a magazine or getting it into a competition. So you have to not love your poem so much that you can't cope with the no. If you send stuff away and it's rejected or returned, often with a really nice note which says, this isn't for us this time, but keep going. That's at the point where some people get very disheartened and think, no, my work's rubbish, I'm never going to write again. But actually, you just have to keep firing it off. So I've sent off so many poems to so many places, and where I've had my successes, it's always very lovely, but it's on the back of lots of rejection and lots of no's, and some poems will win a prize after having been rejected about 30 times before from different locations. So it's about finding the right home for your work. And I think if you can develop that more objective approach to placing your work somewhere, don't be so emotionally bonded to your work that you can't see it as a piece of something that you have to place in the right condition for it, the right magazine or whatever. Then you can go back to being your emotional writerly self that's completely different.
Yes.
And accept the no's, and then as soon as you get a rejection, send it back out. The minute I get to know, that poem goes straight out somewhere else, and then it's back out trying to find its way in the world. So that's really how I deal with that process, and that would be my advice.
How important is it for you as a poet to get that word out? To I guess continue I guess people don't realize that, like, yes, poetry is, that they might not be aware, like, okay, poetry is something we did in school, but is it really out there? And I know on your website you're like, no, it is out there. People love it. How do you get that message out to people that poetry we're alive, we're thriving, we have a whole world here? Do you network a lot?
Do network a lot, and because I'm a publisher and I publish lots of other poets, then I'm obviously aware of a lot of poetry networks, and people who are poets are interesting people by and large. They may not be very sociable people, because writers aren't always the most sociable people, but they're interesting and they like to talk about their own work. So finding connections with other poets and writing, and it is a really thriving scene. I think Instagram poetry has really helped raise the awareness of poetry. It is very suited to social media, the short form, putting something that's not very many words in a beautiful picture or location, is really appealing to people, and it's growing the genre, I think, across social media, which is brilliant, really brilliant.
That's awesome. Yeah, that I didn't even. So, are you on Instagram?
I am on Instagram. I don't do as much work on myself on Instagram as I should do, but I am on Instagram, and I put my poems on there. I show when I've had some success, and I also show the background to the poems and what that's talking. I do some little videos sometimes of reading the poems. So again, it's all part of helping people to understand where the poems are coming from. Really, that it's not just in the book; it's come from this other place. The real life and the inspiration was created.
Exactly. Yeah, with the company I work for, Writers in the Schools, we have one of the aspects of is performance poetry, and they work with kids. So when we see the performances, it just blows your mind.
Absolutely.
You're like, thank God. They're out there doing their thing, and it's amazing. So I'm so happy to see it all keep going and going and going and going, because it's inspirational. That's what I think for sure. That
It is,
and especially being able to orate.
Yes, absolutely. Without any notes or a piece of paper. That's not me. I couldn't do that. I may know some of my poems really well, but I wouldn't feel confident about reading, and long poems, to actually stand and deliver. Full of admiration for performance poets who can do that. It's a real skill.
And then do you teach poetry as well, or do you just work with them through the publishing aspect, marketing aspect?
No, I run a workshop for the Poetry Society. It's a small workshopping group where we bring our poems once a month to share with each other and to read to each other and to improve that individual piece of work. But I don't teach at all. That's not part of my skill set. It's not something I've ever really wanted to do, to be honest.
Yes. Well, that is so great. That is so awesome. Amy, I see you nodding your head.
Oh, because the teaching, I totally get it. I've thought of homeschooling my kids just briefly, and then I just realized that I don't have the knack for that, and I'm not patient enough. So I just know it's just not a strong suit. So I can relate to you 100%. But Di, before we go, I want you to tell us where people can go to learn about your animal sanctuary, about your publishing company, and where they can find your books and order them or get to know you a little bit better.
Okay, thank you. So the Animal Sanctuary is Manor Farm Charitable Trust. We've got a page on Facebook. We've got a page on Instagram. Facebook really has most of the information about the animals and the things that we're doing. We've also got a website which has got some lovely media reels. We got quite a lot of media coverage a few years ago, so you can see me and the animals in the field and everything on there. Then the publishing company is Candlestick Press, and again we've got a website which shows all of the titles that we have. We've got a really good network of stockists in the UK and also growing now in the US, so people can buy Candlestick pamphlets if they wish, and we're always happy to help people find them if they want them. And my books, the new book Hard Graft, is available from Aftershock Review, which is an entirely new publishing house which deals very much with health and aftershocks and things that happen in people's lives that create an aftershock, a ripple effect, which is why this book sits so perfectly with this particular publisher. The guy who runs the Aftershock Review, Max, is a real dynamo, a powerhouse in publishing, and I'm really proud to be one of his first poets to have a collection published there. So that's where you can find them.
Nice. Well, I love it. Well, what is next? You said that you have a book of poetry coming out, and then you're going to shop around and find a publisher for it. But are you currently writing anything else?
I'm kind of editing the ones that are in that collection, kind of tidying them up, making them fit for publication. I am also writing new poems just to finish off that book. So I have a little list of poems still to write to finish that off, which is always a nice thing to do, to have as a finishing sequence. And I have a lovely digital retreat coming up with a fantastic poet called Jonathan Edwards. He's running that in October, where we have a little gang of us who are all part of his group. We meet up once or twice a year and go off on this digital retreat and write lots of new poems. I'm really looking forward to that. The theme of that retreat is love, so I'm really interested to see what comes out of me during that week on that theme, because love doesn't have to just be between people, of course. It can be love of the natural world and love of animals. So really looking forward to hitting that. And
that sounds lovely.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what comes out of your digital retreat, and especially on that topic. So you'll have to keep us updated. But Di, it was lovely. Thank you for taking time out of your hot afternoon to come and hang out with us and chat with us. It was such a delight. And when your next book of poetry comes out, or you have to update me about how your digital retreat goes on that subject, because I know I'm dying to know kind of what all just comes about of it, and I'm excited that you get to do that and that you're in that group. So please keep us updated on that. But you guys, we hope that everybody has a fantastic rest of your day, a great rest of the week, and until next Monday, everybody, bye for now.
Thank you.